Let's talk about Mason Graham on today's episode. The Browns' first round draft pick, number 5 overall, after trading back with the Jags. Welcome on into an at-home edition of the Cleveland Browns Report. Now, I know all the attention has been on the quarterbacks, especially the 2 rookie quarterbacks this offseason, and understandably so, but it is kind of funny how the first 2 draft picks, I could make the argument the first 2 draft picks made by the Browns this year have received the least amount of airtime. Whereas the almost two last draft picks, like Shedeur Sanders, even Dylan Sampson a little bit, and Dylan Gabriel, have been given way more airtime than Mason Graham and Carson Schlesinger. So let's talk a little bit about Mason Graham. And I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, I don't want to be the rain cloud, but I do just want to put this out there because it jumped out to me a little bit, and not in maybe the most glowing positive way. So I'm going to throw this quote on screen right now. And it's defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz talking about Graham, saying, "It's been an adjustment for him. We're a penetrating team that makes a big emphasis on defensive linemen being able to make the plays." All right, timeout. I'm going to jump in real quick here. Do you guys remember when they drafted Siaki Ika? And Jim Schwartz was on the phone with Ika, and he had that clip saying, "You've been a dump truck, but you're going to be a Ferrari for us." And I was not a fan of the Ika pick, because he is a dump truck. And I felt like the Browns were trying to turn him into something he wasn't able to become. He was a 330-pound nose tackle. He was not someone that was going to shed a lot of weight and be an athletic, agile, dancing bear for you. And the Browns wanted him to be that. And they drafted a fatty, which fatties are fine on the defensive line. But don't try and make a fatty into skinny. That's not what you're aspiring to do when putting together nose tackles. Let fatties be fatties. And so I bring that up because I'm starting to get slight shades of that again with Mason Graham. Mason Graham at Michigan was not a heat-seeking pass rush interior missile. That was not him. If you wanted that, there were other guys in this past draft class who you could fill that role better with. Walter Nolan from Ole Miss last year had 6.5 sacks. Derek Harmon from Oregon went to the Steelers, had 5 sacks. Those were guys who on the interior were better at generating pressure and getting penetration and getting to the quarterback, right? Graham, he is someone that even if you try and double team, you're still going to have your head below water. But his calling card is not getting to the quarterback. And as Schwartz points out here, we're a penetrating team, puts a big emphasis on defensive linemen being able to make plays. I think if you go back pre-draft and you really look up what people had to say about Graham, playmaker in the traditional sense of, hey, he's going to get sacks, right? He's going to do all those big, fancy, wow plays. It's probably not something you'd see come up often for him. And so I go back to Siaki Ika, because sure, Jim Schwartz knows a million times more about football than me, zillion times more about defensive alignment. I'm not denying that. But these guys aren't perfect. And this Browns YouTuber 2 years ago, was able to tell you the Ika pick isn't a very good pick. And now here we are. And I like the Graham pick, but I like it because it's happened, and I'm like, all right, it's here. Let's kind of talk yourself into it. He's a really good prospect. He's an excellent run stopper. He's going to be able to gobble up double teams well, and he can shed blockers, and he can, generate penetration. I'm not saying he can't. He's allergic to the backfield, but the guy is not a pass rush pro, and if that's kind of the vision for him, I wouldn't say worried, but I just want to put it out there of like, this is something that if he doesn't end up being the superstar you'd hope someone taken 5th overall would be, you could circle back to this right here and go, well, maybe they didn't put him in a role he was really designed to be in, right? If the role is we want a big emphasis on linemen to make plays, there were probably some other guys that I think could have fit that mold better. I think Mason Graham could be an outstanding threat and force in the middle of the defensive line that can shed double teams, like I said, who can help against the run, who could, collapse the pocket. But if I'm putting together power rankings from DTs in this past draft that are going to get the most sacks in their NFL career, Graham's probably not in the top 2. And so that's where I'm a little bit hung up on. So time will tell, of course. But overall, I like to be optimistic. I feel like maybe you operate the same way or not. When the draft is happening, like the day of the draft, you give your honest response. And then the next day, after sleeping on it and kind of looking up everything there is to know about the player, you try to come back with a little bit more of a half glass full approach if you were half glass empty the day before. You see a bunch of highlights on Twitter and you start to sink your teeth into it and you start to be a little bit more optimistic and you're like, okay, let's look for the bright side of this pick if I was a little bit, pessimistic on it the first go around. And that's what kind of happened to me, because my reaction to Graham being picked when Jeanty was there was like, man, I know Genty's going to be an incredible star, and I think Graham is just going to be a really good player, but I'll try to, see what they're seeing in this pick here. And now with Schwartz talking about, him making an adjustment, there's always going to be an adjustment when you get to the NFL. It's not going to be a carbon copy of what you did in college, but the last time Schwartz tried to make an adjustment for his, young rookie defensive tackle, it didn't go well. And as a student of history, I'm a little bit skeptical when I see things like that, of history because history tends to repeat itself, and I hope it doesn't repeat itself and have the same outcome this go around here. So I know people were nervous when Graham was throwing up, picture right here of him throwing up the first day or whatever it was, a rookie mini camp, and people were like, oh my God, this is off to a poor start. And I was like, I'm happy he's throwing up, right? I see a guy out there who's busting his ass, and when you weigh close to 300 pounds, yeah, you've got a lot of, cargo moving with you. I expect there to be a bit of a, pushback from your body working under the sun, 300 pounds, and maybe it's the first time you've done a hardcore workout in a few weeks. I mean, you just got to think it's human nature, where if you were in their shoes as a draftee, you work so hard all season long, but then you can't take your foot off the gas because you got, Senior Bowl and, the Mobile, whatever one, that East-West Shrine Bowl, and then you got the Combine, then you get your Pro Day, you do all that, and then after your Pro Day, you're like, all right, I'm going to kind of sit back a little bit, got a private workout maybe, but like once you get to within 2 weeks of the draft, you could probably go, you know what? I think I will go through that Cane's drive-thru, and maybe you take your foot off the gas a little bit, and then you go out for your first team practice, and maybe it's been 10 days since you did some hardcore cardio, and so you get a little bit of workout going, you throw up. And I like that, right? I want to see the big fellows out there working hard. No issues for me on that front there. That's going to do it for us on today's episode. Really appreciate everyone for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow with another episode.